Have you ever walked into a coffee shop, knew every word in English, but suddenly forgot how to speak? Maybe you practiced for weeks at home, but when the person behind the counter smiled and asked, "What can I get for you today?" your mind went completely blank. If that has ever happened to you, don't worry. Today we're going to share two real stories that change the way we speak English in everyday life. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly what to say in one of the most common daily conversations you'll ever have.
Welcome back to Rose and Jack Everyday English. We're so happy you're here again. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's episode and learned something new. This is day 4 of our 30-day B1 to B2 challenge. And today we're talking about daily English conversations every English learner must know. Today's episode is a little different. Instead of teaching vocabulary first, we're going to tell you real stories from our own English learning journey. You'll hear how we made mistakes, how we felt embarrassed, and how those small moments helped us become more confident English speakers. Just relax. Listen to the conversation and enjoy it like you're sitting in your favorite coffee shop. Later, we'll come back and explain the most useful expressions we used naturally. So, Jack, are you ready?
Always ready. And I have to say, today's topic makes me smile because I still remember one very embarrassing day at a small bakery. I thought my English was good, but after one simple question from the cashier, I completely froze.
I think every English learner has a story like that. Mine happened in a coffee shop, and honestly, I wanted to disappear for a few seconds. But looking back now, I'm really happy it happened because it taught me one important lesson.
Exactly. So if you're listening while walking, studying, cooking, or relaxing, imagine you're sitting at a small cafe with us. Grab your favorite drink and let's talk.
You know, Jack, every time someone asks me where they should start if they want to speak English more naturally, I don't tell them to memorize hundreds of words. I don't even tell them to study grammar for hours every day. I always say, start with conversations you'll actually have. Think about your normal life. Maybe you buy coffee before work. Maybe you order lunch at university. Maybe you ask someone for directions or talk to a cashier at the supermarket. Those are the conversations that happen again and again. If you become confident in those situations, your English starts to feel real instead of something you only use in a classroom. That reminds me of something that happened a few years ago. It was my first week in a city where almost everyone spoke English. I had studied English for years. I could read books. I could watch YouTube videos. I even understood podcasts. So I thought, this is going to be easy. The next morning, I walked into a beautiful little coffee shop. It smelled amazing. Fresh coffee, warm bread, chocolate cookies. I remember thinking, this is exactly like the cafes I've seen in movies. There were only 3 people in front of me, so I had plenty of time to think about what I wanted to order. I repeated the sentence in my head again and again. I'd like a cappuccino, please. Simple, right?
Very simple, at least in your head.
Exactly. Everything sounded perfect in my imagination. Then suddenly, it was my turn. The barista looked at me, smiled, and said, "Hi, how are you today?" And do you know what happened? My brain completely stopped working. I wasn't expecting that question. I had prepared for ordering coffee, but I hadn't prepared for a friendly greeting. For about 3 seconds, I just stood there smiling. It probably felt much longer. Finally, I answered, "Yes." He laughed too and said, "I'm doing well. What can I get for you today?" That one smile changed everything. Suddenly, I wasn't talking to a scary native speaker anymore. I was simply talking to another person. The poor barista looked confused. He smiled again and repeated the question a little more slowly. "How are you today?" Then I realized my mistake. I quickly laughed and said, "Oh, sorry. I'm good, thank you. How are you?"
I love that story because I think almost everyone listening has experienced something similar. It's funny how our brains work. At home, we can answer every question perfectly. We feel confident, we repeat sentences while looking in the mirror, we even imagine different conversations. But the moment a real person looks at us and starts speaking naturally, our confidence suddenly disappears. Something very similar happened to me, but mine was even more embarrassing because it happened after I had been learning English for quite a long time. I went into a small bakery one Saturday morning because I wanted to buy fresh bread. I walked in feeling confident. I even thought to myself, today I'm going to speak only English. The woman behind the counter greeted me warmly and asked what I wanted. Everything was going well. I ordered 2 pieces of bread and a chocolate croissant. Then she smiled and asked one short question. For here or to go? I had never heard that question before. I knew every single word separately. I knew for, I knew here, I knew go. But together, nothing. My brain couldn't understand what she meant. So instead of asking her to repeat the question, I simply smiled and said, yes.
Oh no, not yes. Please don't tell me you said yes.
I absolutely did. And then she asked again, for here or to go? This time she spoke even more slowly because she thought maybe I couldn't hear her. I still didn't understand, so I smiled even bigger and I said, yes, thank you.
I can already imagine what happened next.
She looked at me for a second, then she smiled kindly and pointed at one table inside the bakery. She pointed at the door, then she pointed back to the table. Without saying another word, she was trying to help me understand. At that moment, it finally made sense. She wasn't asking about my order, she was asking where I wanted to eat it. I laughed so much that even the people waiting behind me started smiling. I said, "Oh, to go, please." She laughed too and said, "No problem. It happens all the time." That sentence stayed with me for years. It happens all the time. Not just to me, to many English learners. And that made me feel much better.
You know what I love about your story, Jack? It reminds us that English isn't only about vocabulary. Sometimes we already know the words, but we don't know how people use them in real life. Before I started speaking with native speakers, I thought every conversation would follow the examples from my textbooks. Someone would ask a question, I would give the perfect answer, and everything would be easy. But real conversations don't work like that. People speak naturally. They smile, they ask unexpected questions, and sometimes they change the topic without warning. That first experience in the coffee shop made me realize that learning English from books was only one part of the journey. The other part was learning how real people actually communicate. After that day, I made a promise to myself. Every time I went to a cafe, I would try to start a tiny conversation instead of just ordering my drink and leaving. At first, it felt uncomfortable. My heart beat faster every time I stood in line, but something interesting happened. The more I practiced, the easier it became. I wasn't trying to sound perfect anymore. I was simply trying to connect with another person.
That's such an important point. I think many learners believe they need perfect English before they start speaking. I used to think the same way. I'd spend hours studying grammar or memorizing vocabulary, but as someone suddenly spoke to me, I became nervous. One day, a friend asked me a simple question. He said, "Jack, when are you going to stop preparing and actually start speaking?" That question stayed in my mind for days. I realized I had been waiting for a moment that would never come. I wanted to feel 100% ready, but language doesn't work like that. You become ready by speaking, not before speaking, so I created a little challenge for myself. Every Saturday morning, I went to the same bakery. Not because I needed bread, but because I needed practice.
I love that idea. Did the people working there start recognizing you?
Oh yes, after about 3 weeks, the woman behind the counter smiled the moment I walked in. She said, "Good morning, nice to see you again." The first time she remembered me, I was surprised. I smiled and answered, "Good morning, it's nice to see you too." It was only one sentence, just one sentence, but I walked out of that bakery feeling like I had won a competition. It sounds funny now, but those little moments gave me confidence. Confidence doesn't suddenly appear one morning. It grows little by little. Every successful conversation adds a little more. Every mistake teaches you something. Every smile reminds you that communication is more important than perfection.
Exactly. Sometimes learners ask me, "Rose, what's the secret to speaking naturally?" They're usually expecting me to give them a list of grammar rules or 50 difficult expressions. But my answer is much simpler. I tell them to collect small conversations, not difficult conversations, small ones. Say hello, order coffee, ask for a receipt, thank the cashier, wish someone a nice day. Those tiny conversations happen every day, and they slowly become automatic. When something becomes automatic, your brain has more space to think about the next sentence instead of worrying about every single word. That's exactly what happened to me. About 2 months after my embarrassing coffee shop experience, I went back to the same cafe. This time, I wasn't nervous. I walked in, smiled, and said, "Good morning. How's your day going?" The barista looked pleasantly surprised. He smiled and answered, "It's been busy, but it's going well. How about yours?" We talked for maybe 20 seconds. Nothing special. We didn't become best friends, but I walked out thinking, wow, I just had a real conversation in English. That feeling stayed with me all day.
I know that feeling so well. People often think confidence comes first. Actually, confidence comes after experience. It's like riding a bicycle. You don't become confident before your first ride. You become confident after riding many times. English is very similar. The first conversation feels scary. The second feels a little easier. The 10th feels normal. And one day, you suddenly realize you've been speaking English for 5 minutes without translating in your head. That's a wonderful moment.
Did you ever notice another interesting change? At first, I translated everything from my first language into English. Every sentence, every question, every answer. It was exhausting. But after practicing these everyday conversations again and again, something changed. When someone asked, "What would you like to drink?" I didn't translate anymore. The answer simply appeared in English. "I'd like a latte, please." It felt natural. That was the moment I realized I was finally beginning to think in English.
Yes, and that's why everyday conversations are so powerful. You hear the same questions again and again. How are you? What can I get for you? Anything else? Would you like it for here or to go? After hearing them many times, your brain stops treating them as grammar exercises. They become familiar, almost like songs you've listened to hundreds of times. You don't think about every word, you simply understand. That's exactly what we want for everyone listening today. Not perfect English, comfortable English, natural English, English that helps you enjoy real conversations instead of fearing them.
There's one more thing I'd like to mention because I think many listeners will understand this. Sometimes after making one mistake, we become too embarrassed to speak again. I nearly did that after my first coffee shop experience. I went home and kept thinking, why did I answer yes when he asked how I was? I replayed that moment over and over. Then I asked myself one simple question. Will I remember this 1 year from now? The answer was probably no. And I also realized something else. The barista had already forgotten it 5 minutes later. The only person still thinking about my mistake was me. That thought changed everything.
That's such a valuable lesson. We often believe everyone notices our mistakes, but most people are busy thinking about their own lives. They're not judging us. In fact, many people admire someone who's brave enough to speak another language. I've even had native English speakers tell me, "I wish I could speak another language like you." That surprised me. Here I was worrying about one small grammar mistake while they were impressed that I could communicate in another language at all.
Exactly. So if you're listening today and you're afraid of speaking English because you might make mistakes, remember this. Every confident English speaker was once a beginner. Every fluent speaker has had embarrassing moments. The difference is that they didn't stop. They kept ordering coffee. They kept asking questions. They kept saying hello, one conversation at a time. And that's how fluency grows.
Rose, while you were talking, I remembered another moment that taught me something important. It wasn't in a coffee shop this time. It happened a few weeks later at another cafe. I had already become comfortable ordering my drink, so I thought, great, I don't need to worry anymore. But language always finds a new way to surprise you. I walked in, smiled confidently, and said, "Hi, I'd like a medium cappuccino, please." Everything was going perfectly. The barista prepared my coffee, looked at me, and asked, "Would you like anything else today?" For a second, I didn't know what to say. Not because I didn't understand. I understood every word. The problem was that nobody had ever taught me how to answer naturally. I stood there thinking, should I say no? Should I say no thanks? Should I say that's all? There were so many possible answers that my mind became slow again. Finally, I smiled and said, "No, thank you, that's all." The conversation lasted maybe 10 seconds, but I realized something very important. Learning English isn't only about understanding questions, it's also about becoming comfortable with simple everyday answers.
I completely agree. And that's one reason we're making this podcast. We want everyone listening to hear natural conversations again and again until those answers become automatic. When people study alone, they often memorize long vocabulary lists. There's nothing wrong with vocabulary, of course, but imagine learning 50 words for different kinds of weather and never learning how to order a coffee or ask for a receipt. Which one will you use tomorrow? Probably the coffee shop conversation. That's why everyday English is so powerful. It isn't exciting because the words are difficult. It's exciting because these conversations become part of your real life.
Exactly. And here's something funny. After visiting that same cafe for several months, I noticed that the conversations slowly became longer without me planning them. At first, it was only, "Good morning, my usual coffee, please. Thank you." Then, one day, the barista looked outside the window and said, "It's really raining today." Normally, I would have smiled politely and stayed quiet, but this time I answered, "Yes, I almost forgot my umbrella this morning." That tiny answer changed everything. He replied, "Oh, that would have been a terrible start to your day." Then we laughed together. The whole conversation lasted less than a minute, but it felt real. Not because my English was perfect, because we were simply talking.
That's such a great example. Many learners believe they have to tell long stories to practice English. Actually, short conversations are often more useful. Think about your own day. How many conversations last 30 minutes? Probably not many. Most of them last 30 seconds, 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes. But those little conversations happen everywhere: at the supermarket, at the bus stop, in a coffee shop, at work, at school. Every one of them gives you another chance to practice.
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
When did you stop feeling nervous? Was there one special day when you suddenly became confident, or was it more gradual?
Definitely gradual. I wish I could tell everyone that one magical day I woke up and suddenly spoke perfect English, but that's not what happened. Confidence grew so slowly that I almost didn't notice it. One day I realized I wasn't thinking about grammar while ordering. A few weeks later, I noticed I could ask one extra question. Then I started understanding jokes. Later, I began making my own jokes. Every little step felt small at the time, but when I looked back after a year, I realized I had traveled a long distance. Sometimes learners don't notice their own progress because they're looking only at the final goal. Instead, I think it's better to celebrate the little victories. Your first successful order, your first phone call, your first compliment in English, your first conversation that lasts 5 minutes. Those moments matter.
That's such good advice. I actually kept a notebook during my English journey. Not for grammar, not for vocabulary, for moments. Whenever something good happened in English, I wrote it down. Today I understood everything in a cafe. Today someone laughed at my joke. Today I asked a question without translating. Whenever I felt discouraged, I read those pages again. They reminded me that progress was happening even when it felt slow.
I love that idea. Sometimes we remember our mistakes much more clearly than our successes. If we make one small mistake, we think about it all evening. But when we have 10 successful conversations, we forget them by the next day. Keeping a notebook helps your brain notice the progress you're already making.
Speaking of progress, can we talk about something learners often worry about? Accents. I receive so many messages from people saying, "Jack, I'm afraid people will hear my accent." Honestly, I used to worry about exactly the same thing. I tried to sound exactly like native speakers. Every sentence, every word. I thought that was the goal. Then one afternoon, I met a man from Italy, a woman from Brazil, and a student from Japan. All of them spoke English differently. All of them had different accents, but they communicated beautifully. Nobody cared about sounding identical. Everyone cared about understanding each other. That completely changed my perspective.
Yes, an accent tells part of your story. Clear pronunciation is important. Speaking confidently is important. But having an accent isn't a problem. The goal isn't to hide where you come from. The goal is to communicate clearly. I've met wonderful English speakers from dozens of countries. Each person sounded slightly different. And that's one of the beautiful things about English. It's an international language. People from all over the world use it to connect.
Exactly. So, if you're listening right now and you're thinking, my pronunciation isn't perfect, my grammar isn't perfect, my vocabulary isn't perfect, here's what I'd like to tell you. Don't wait until you think you're perfect. Order the coffee, ask the question, start the conversation. Because every conversation teaches you something that no textbook ever can.
I couldn't agree more. And actually, Jack, I have a little challenge for everyone listening today. The next time you visit a coffee shop, don't stop after ordering. Try adding just one extra sentence. Maybe ask, "How's your day going?" Or, "What's your most popular drink?" Or even, "Thank you. Have a great day." It doesn't have to be a long conversation. Just one extra sentence. You might be surprised by how friendly people are when you take that first step.
And if you feel nervous, remember our stories. Rose answered yes to "How are you?" I answered yes to "For here or to go." We both survived. Actually, those embarrassing moments became some of our favorite memories because they helped us become better English speakers. Sometimes the conversations that make you laugh later are the ones that teach you the most.
You know, Jack, after hearing both of our stories, I keep thinking about one simple idea. Most people don't become better English speakers because they suddenly learn thousands of new words. They become better because they stop avoiding small conversations. Think about it. Imagine two learners. The first learner studies grammar for 2 hours every day, but never speaks. The second learner studies for only 30 minutes, but every day they greet someone, order a coffee, ask a simple question, or have a 1-minute conversation. After 6 months, who do you think will feel more confident? For me, the answer is obvious. Practice changes people, not because practice makes you perfect, but because practice makes you comfortable.
I completely agree. Comfort is something we don't talk about enough. People always ask, how can I become fluent? Very few people ask, how can I become comfortable? But comfort comes first. When you're comfortable, your brain relaxes. When your brain relaxes, you remember more vocabulary. You listen more carefully. You smile more. And surprisingly, you make fewer mistakes. That's exactly what happened to me. One day, I walked into my favorite coffee shop, and before I even reached the counter, the barista looked at me and said, "The usual?" I laughed. I couldn't believe he remembered my order. I said, "Yes, please, thank you." Then he asked, "How's your week going?" A few months earlier, I probably would have answered with one word, "Good." This time, I said, "It's been busy, but I'm enjoying it. I've been working on my English every day." He smiled and said, "I can tell. Your English sounds much more confident now." I don't think he realized how important those words were to me. I carried that compliment with me for the rest of the week.
That's wonderful. Sometimes one kind sentence can motivate us more than 100 grammar exercises. I remember receiving a compliment too. It wasn't about my grammar. It wasn't about my pronunciation. It was simply about my confidence. The cashier said, "I like talking with you. You're always friendly." When I walked out of that cafe, I thought, that's the real goal. Not sounding perfect, being able to connect with people. Language is about people, not perfection.
Exactly. And I think that's something our listeners should remember. If your goal is only to avoid mistakes, speaking English will always feel stressful. But if your goal is to communicate, you'll start enjoying conversations. Of course, you'll still make mistakes. So do native speakers. Everyone says the wrong words sometimes. Everyone misunderstands people sometimes. Communication is never perfect. It's human.
Can we imagine one more situation together? Let's say one of our listeners is standing in a line at a coffee shop tomorrow morning. They're nervous. Their heart is beating fast. They're thinking, what if I forget everything? What advice would you give them?
I'd tell them to slow down. Take one deep breath. Smile. Remember that the person behind the counter probably serves hundreds of customers every day. They're not expecting a perfect English performance. They're simply asking what you'd like to drink. Listen carefully. If you don't understand something, it's perfectly okay to say, "Sorry, could you repeat that, please?" Or, "Sorry, I didn't catch that." Those are normal sentences. Even native speakers use them. Never pretend you understand when you don't. That usually creates a bigger misunderstanding later.
That's excellent advice. I'd add one more thing. Don't rush. Many learners think speaking quickly makes them sound fluent. Actually, speaking clearly is much more important. I'd rather hear someone speak slowly and confidently than very fast and nervously. Take your time. Finish one sentence, then start the next one. Most people won't mind waiting a few extra seconds.
Absolutely. And here's another little habit that helped me. After every conversation, instead of thinking, "What mistakes did I make?" I asked myself, "What did I do well?" Maybe I remembered to greet the cashier. Maybe I asked one extra question. Maybe I understood everything. Celebrating those small successes kept me motivated. If we only focus on mistakes, learning becomes exhausting.
I like that. Actually, I still do something similar today. Sometimes after leaving a cafe, I think, today I learned one new expression, or today I noticed how the barista greeted every customer. Learning doesn't always happen from textbooks. Sometimes it happens simply by paying attention. Listening carefully is one of the best teachers you'll ever have.
You know what's interesting? When I first started learning English, I thought conversations were like exams. Someone asks a question, you must give the correct answer. Now, I see conversations completely differently. They're like playing catch with a friend. One person throws the ball, the other person catches it and throws it back. Nobody is trying to win. You're simply enjoying the interaction. That simple change completely reduced my fear of speaking.
That's a beautiful comparison, and it reminds me of something I once heard. People rarely remember every word of a conversation, but they often remember how the conversation made them feel. Did the other person smile? Were they kind? Did they listen? Those things matter much more than perfect grammar. So don't forget to smile, be curious, ask simple questions, show interest. Those qualities make conversations enjoyable in any language.
Before we finish this part of today's episode, I'd like everyone listening to imagine something. Imagine yourself 6 months from now. You walk into your favorite coffee shop. You smile naturally. The cashier greets you. You understand every question. You answer without translating. You even make a little small talk while waiting for your drink. That future version of you isn't created by one perfect lesson. It's created by hundreds of tiny conversations like the ones we've been talking about today. One greeting, one question, one smile, one coffee at a time.
I love that image, and I want everyone listening to know something. If you're still nervous about speaking English, that's okay. If you've ever forgotten a simple word, that's okay. If you've ever smiled because you didn't understand a question, believe me, you're not alone. We've been there too. Every confident speaker has stories that make them laugh today. Those stories weren't failures, they were the beginning of confidence. So the next time you walk into a coffee shop, don't think, I hope I don't make a mistake. Instead think, I wonder what I'll learn today. That small change in your mindset can completely change your experience.
And remember,
Rose and I aren't sharing these stories because we're embarrassed by them anymore. We're sharing them because those moments changed us. If they helped us become more confident English speakers, your experiences can do exactly the same for you. Keep showing up, keep speaking, keep smiling, and most importantly, keep enjoying the journey.
Exactly. Learning English isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more confident as yourself. Well, that was a fun conversation, Jack. We shared some funny stories, but I hope everyone noticed something important. We didn't use difficult English. We used simple English that people really say every day. That's exactly what helps you move from B1 to B2. So let's go back and look at some of the expressions we use naturally.
Good idea. And don't worry if you didn't understand every single sentence the first time. That's completely normal. The more you hear these expressions in real conversations, the more natural they'll become. Let's start with our first expression.
1. What can I get for you today? This is one of the most common questions you'll hear in a coffee shop, bakery, or restaurant. It simply means, what would you like to order? For example, the waiter smiles and says, what can I get for you today? You can answer, I'd like a latte, please. Or, can I have a chicken sandwich?
Notice that people don't always ask, what do you want? That sounds a little direct. What can I get for you sounds much warmer and friendlier. Listen for it the next time you're watching an English movie or listening to an English podcast.
2. I'd like. Yes, I do. I actually still do something similar today. Sometimes after leaving a cafe, I think, today I learned one new expression. Or, today I noticed how the barista greeted every customer. Learning doesn't always happen from textbooks. Sometimes it happens simply by paying attention. Listening carefully is one of the best teachers you'll ever have.
What's next? 3, for here or to go?
This question confused Jack, and honestly, it confuses many English learners. It means, are you going to eat here? Or would you like to take it with you? If you're staying, say, for here, please. If you're leaving, say, to go, please. That's all.
That last question keeps the conversation going. Instead of answering and stopping, invite the other person to speak. Good conversations are always shared.
4. I didn't catch that. This is one expression every English learner should know. Sometimes people speak quickly. Instead of pretending you understood, simply say, sorry, I didn't catch that. Or, could you say that again, please? People are usually happy to repeat themselves.
Even native speakers use this expression, so don't be embarrassed. Asking someone to repeat something is completely normal.
5. It happens all the time. I loved this sentence from Jack's story. When someone says, it happens all the time, they mean, don't worry, this is very common. Imagine you accidentally spill your coffee. Someone smiles and says, don't worry, it happens all the time. Immediately, you feel more relaxed.
It's a comforting expression. And remember, making mistakes while learning English, it happens all the time.
So, those were 10 useful expressions from today's conversation. Here's a little challenge for you. As you listen to English this week, whether it's a podcast, a YouTube video, or even a movie, see how many of these expressions you can recognize. You might be surprised how often people use them in everyday life.
And remember, don't try to memorize all 10 today. Pick 2 or 3 expressions and start using them in your own conversations. That's how real progress happens, one useful phrase at a time.
Before we finish today's episode, let's look at a few common mistakes that many English learners make in coffee shops and other everyday conversations. Don't worry if you've made some of these mistakes before. We've made them too.
Absolutely. The goal isn't to avoid every mistake. The goal is to notice them, learn from them, and feel more confident the next time you speak. Let's look at our first one. Mistake 1. Saying, I want. Many learners say, I want a coffee. Now, is that grammatically wrong? Not really, but in everyday English, it can sound a little direct.
A much more natural and polite way to order is, I'd like a coffee, please, or could I have a coffee, please? You'll hear these expressions much more often in cafes and restaurants.
Mistake 2. Pretending to understand. I used to do this all the time. If I didn't understand the question, I'd smile and answer yes, even when yes made absolutely no sense.
We've all been there. Instead of pretending, try saying, "Sorry, could you repeat that, please?" Or, "Sorry, I didn't catch that." People are usually happy to repeat themselves, and it saves everyone from confusion.
Mistake 3. Being afraid to make mistakes. This isn't a grammar mistake, it's a thinking mistake. Many learners tell themselves, I'll speak English when I'm perfect. The truth is, nobody becomes fluent by waiting. You become fluent by speaking, even if you make small mistakes. Every conversation teaches you something new. Remember our stories from today. Rose answered yes when someone asked, How are you? I answered yes when someone asked, For here or to go? We laughed, we learned, and we kept speaking. Those mistakes didn't stop us, they helped us grow. So if you make a mistake tomorrow, smile, learn from it, and keep the conversation going. That's how real English learners become confident English speakers.
Now, let's do a challenge. Try to speak with us without stopping. Imagine you're standing in a real coffee shop. Ready? Good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'd like a medium cappuccino, please.
Of course. Would you like anything else?
Yes, I'd also like a chocolate muffin, please.
Certainly. Is that for here or to go?
To go, please.
That'll be $8. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Fantastic work. If some sentences felt difficult today, that's completely normal. The goal isn't to be perfect the first time. Listen to this episode again tomorrow, repeat the shadowing exercise, and you'll notice how much easier it becomes.
Remember, confidence doesn't come from knowing more grammar. It comes from speaking again and again. Every sentence you repeat brings you one step closer to speaking English naturally. Great job today, and let's keep improving together.
What a wonderful conversation today. We hope our stories reminded you that every English learner starts somewhere. Don't be afraid of making mistakes, because every mistake is a chance to learn something new. Remember, speaking English isn't about being perfect. It's about communicating with confidence. So the next time you walk into a coffee shop, a bakery, or any place where you can speak English, take a deep breath, smile, and start the conversation. You might be surprised by how much you already know.
And here's a little challenge before our next episode. This week, try to have a short conversation in English. It doesn't have to be long. Maybe greet someone, order a drink, ask a simple question, or even practice with a friend or by yourself. The important thing is to speak. Every small conversation brings you one step closer to becoming a confident English speaker.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend who's also learning English. Learning is always more fun when you do it together. And if you're following our 30-day B1 to B2 challenge, congratulations! You're building a daily habit, and that's one of the best ways to improve your English. We're really proud of you for showing up today.
Don't miss tomorrow's episode, day 5 of our 30-day B1 to B2 challenge. Until then, keep listening, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself. Every sentence you speak, every conversation you have, and every mistake you learn from is helping you become a stronger English speaker. Take care, keep smiling, and keep enjoying your English journey.